I walked into my childhood home carrying a box of my favorite books, the ones I'd been storing at my apartment because there wasn't enough space in my tiny studio. Mom had called that morning, her voice unusually sweet, saying she had something to show me. I figured maybe they'd finally decided to convert the garage into that home office Dad had been talking about for years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What I found instead was Princess, my parents' 3-year-old, golden retriever, sprawled across my old twin bed like she owned the place. My desk was gone, replaced with a luxury dog bed that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. The walls that once held my high school graduation photos and art awards were now decorated with framed pictures of Princess at various dog shows and a custom portrait of her wearing a tiny tiara. My name is Anna Marie, and I'm 26 years old. I grew up in this house in Denver, Colorado, in this very room that apparently now belonged to a dog. Standing in that doorway, holding my box of books like some kind of rejected delivery person, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, exactly, but crack. Like when you drop a glass and it doesn't shatter immediately, but you know it's only a matter of time before it falls apart completely. Mom appeared behind me, her voice bright and cheerful as if she was showing off a newly renovated kitchen instead of my erased childhood. Isn't it wonderful? Princess has been having such trouble sleeping in the laundry room. The poor thing needs her beauty rest, especially with the Westminster preliminaries coming up. We thought this room was perfect since it gets the morning sun. I turned to look at her, this woman who had given birth to me, raised me, taught me to ride a bike in the driveway outside. Her eyes were genuinely excited, like she expected me to share in her enthusiasm for displacing me in favor of a dog. "Where exactly do you expect me to stay when I visit?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, honey, you have your own place now. Besides, the couch in the basement is perfectly comfortable. Your father sleeps down there sometimes when his back acts up." The basement. The damp, windowless basement where we used to store Christmas decorations and old tax documents. That's where I ranked in the family hierarchy now, somewhere below Princess but above the holiday tinsel. I set my box down on what used to be my dresser, now serving as Princess's grooming station. The dog looked up at me with those big brown eyes that everyone always cooed over, tail wagging slightly as if she was trying to apologize for the situation. At least she had the decency to look guilty. "I see you've already made yourself at home," I said to Princess, scratching behind her ears. It wasn't her fault, after all. She was just a dog who had been given a room by people who apparently valued her comfort more than their daughter's sense of belonging. Mom beamed. "She loves it here. Look, we even had that built-in bookshelf converted into a display case for her trophies. Isn't that clever? My books, my poetry collections, my art, history textbooks, my grandmother's old recipe books that Mom had promised would be mine someday. All gone to make room for ribbons and plastic trophies from local dog shows. I wondered if they'd even asked me before clearing out my things, or if they'd just assumed I wouldn't mind. "Where are my books?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Oh, we donated most of them to the library. They were just collecting dust anyway. But don't worry, we kept the important ones in a box in the garage." The garage, where we kept the lawnmower and bags of old clothes destined for goodwill. That's where my memories went to die, apparently. I walked over to the window, the same window where I used to sit and read for hours as a teenager, where I'd watch the neighborhood kids play in the street and dream about all the places I'd travel someday. Now it had a custom dog bed positioned perfectly to catch the afternoon light, complete with a little ladder so Princess could climb up easily. "This is really something," I said, and Mom took it as a compliment. "I knew you'd understand. You always were the practical one in the family. Not like Jessica, who would have thrown a fit about change." Jessica, my older sister who lived in California now, working as a marketing executive for some tech company. She had her own guest room here, of course, perfectly preserved like a shrine to her high school volleyball career. Her trophies still lined the shelves, her photos still hung on the walls. But then again, Jessica had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I thought about my brother Michael, who had moved back home twice in the past 3 years, both times getting his old room back without question. His childhood bedroom remained untouched too, waiting for whenever he might need it again. But Anna. Marie's room? That was fair game for the family pet. Well, I said, picking up my box again, I guess I should head home then. Mom's face fell slightly. You're not staying for dinner? I made that casserole you used to love. Used to love, past tense, as if my preferences had expired along with my claim to a bedroom in this house. I've got plans, I lied, because sitting in the basement eating dinner while Princess lounged in my old room felt like more humiliation than I could handle in one day. I drove home to my studio apartment, a cramped space above a coffee shop that smelled perpetually of espresso and disappointment. But at least it was mine. No one could give it to a dog without asking me first. That night, I sat on my tiny balcony that barely fit a single chair, looking out at the city lights and trying to process what had happened. It wasn't just about the room. It was about what the room represented. It was about being erased from my own family history, reduced to an afterthought while a dog got royal treatment. I thought about all the times I'd helped my parents over the years. When Dad had his heart attack 2 years ago, I was the one who took a week off work to stay with him in the hospital. I was the one who drove Mom to all her appointments when she was too anxious to drive herself after the accident. I was the one who showed up every time they needed something fixed, something moved, something handled. But Jessica got the preserved shrine, Michael got the welcome mat, and I got the basement couch. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Princess is settling in so well. She even knows to wipe her paws before getting on the bed. Such a smart girl. I stared at that message for a long time, watching the words blur as my eyes filled with tears I refused to let fall. Princess was a smart girl. Princess was settling in well. Princess had somehow earned more consideration and care than I had. That's when I started remembering things I'd tried to forget, like how they'd missed my college graduation because Jessica had a job interview that same weekend. We'll celebrate when you get home, they'd said, but we never did. Or how they'd forgotten my birthday last year entirely, only remembering when I called to thank them for the card that never came. Oh, sweetie, we've been so busy with Princess's training schedule, Mom had said, as if that explained everything. I thought about Christmas morning, when I'd arrived with carefully chosen gifts for everyone, only to find that my stocking was the only one not hung by the fireplace. We ran out of hooks, Dad had said, but there was Princess's custom stocking, embroidered with her name in gold thread, hanging proudly next to the others. The signs had been there for months, maybe years. I'd just been too busy trying to maintain my place in the family to notice I was being slowly pushed out of it. My laptop was open on my kitchen table, and almost without thinking, I found myself Googling real estate lawyers in Denver. I don't know what I was planning initially. Maybe I just wanted to understand my rights, or maybe I was curious about something that had been nagging at me for months. See, there was something my parents didn't know about the house they'd just given my room away in. Something they'd forgotten in all their excitement about Princess's new accommodations. 3 years ago, when Dad had his heart attack, they'd been worried about estate planning and medical expenses. They'd asked me to help them set up a family trust, something to protect their assets if they needed long-term care. I'd spent weeks researching lawyers, filling out paperwork, making appointments. I'd even paid the legal fees up front when they were short on cash. In all that paperwork, in all those legal documents they'd signed without reading carefully, there was a clause. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A small paragraph that transferred ownership of the house to me in the event that they decided to sell, or if certain conditions were met. It was meant to be a safety net, a way to ensure the house stayed in the family if they ever needed to move to assisted living. But there was another clause, one the lawyer had suggested as a way to protect against elder abuse or financial exploitation. If the primary beneficiary of the trust, meaning me, felt that the property was being misused or that I was being treated unfairly in matters related to the family home, I could invoke a clause that would immediately transfer the deed to my name. I'd forgotten about it until tonight, sitting in my studio apartment while Princess slept in my childhood bedroom. The next morning, I called Mr. Thompson, the lawyer who'd helped us set up the trust. "I need to ask you about some paperwork we filed a few years ago," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Of course, Anna Marie. What can I help you with?" "The family trust for my parents' house. There was a clause about property transfer under certain circumstances." I heard papers shuffling on the other end of the line. "Ah, yes. I remember that case. Very thorough planning on your part. Are you looking to invoke the transfer clause?" "I'm not sure yet. Can you walk me through what that would mean?" Mr. Thompson explained that the transfer would be immediate and legal, that the house would become mine outright. My parents would have the right to remain as tenants, but major decisions about the property would be mine to make. "It's a big step," he said. "Are you sure you want to go down this path?" I thought about Princess's custom dog bed positioned perfectly in the morning sun. I thought about my books donated to the library like they were nothing. I thought about being offered the basement couch like I should be grateful for the privilege. "Let me think about it," I said. But I'd already made up my mind. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house. Mom was in the backyard, setting up an elaborate obstacle course for Princess's training. She looked up when she saw me, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "Anna Marie." Perfect timing. I was just about to work with Princess on her jumping technique. "Want to watch?" I watched Princess navigate the course with impressive skill, her tail wagging as Mom cheered her on. There was real love there, real pride, the kind of enthusiasm I'd never seen directed at any of my accomplishments. "She's amazing," I said, and I meant it. Princess was a beautiful, well-trained dog who clearly brought my parents joy. "Isn't she? The trainer says she has real potential for nationals next year. We're thinking of hiring a professional handler." A professional handler for a dog. While I'd paid my own way through college and celebrated my achievements alone. "That sounds expensive," I said. "Oh, it is. But she's worth it. Besides, we have some room in the budget now that we're not helping Jessica with her rent anymore." They'd been helping Jessica with rent. Jessica, who made 3 times what I did at her tech job. Jessica, who drove a BMW and took European vacations twice a year. But they'd been helping her with rent while I struggled to make ends meet in my tiny apartment. "That's nice," I said, my voice carefully neutral. Mom looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I thought she might actually see me. See how this all felt, how much it hurt to be treated like an afterthought in my own family. "You know, Anna Marie, I've been thinking, you should really consider getting a dog. It might help with your loneliness." My loneliness. As if the solution to being ignored by my family was to get a pet, rather than addressing why I felt ignored in the first place. "I'll think about it," I said. That night I called Mr. Thompson back. "I want to move forward with the property transfer," I said. "Are you absolutely certain? This isn't something you can easily undo." I looked around my cramped apartment, at the box of books that had been deemed unworthy of shelf space in my childhood home, at the life I'd built entirely on my own because my family had been too busy with Princess to notice I needed help. "I'm certain," I said. The paperwork took 3 days to process. 3 days during which I went to work, came home, and lived my normal life while quietly becoming the legal owner of my childhood home. 3 days during which my parents posted daily updates on Facebook about Princess's training progress, complete with professional photos they'd paid for. On Thursday morning, I got the call from Mr. Thompson. "It's done. The house is officially yours. I've sent copies of all documents to your email, and the county records have been updated." I sat in my car outside my office building, staring at the email attachment that made me a homeowner. The same house where I'd learned to walk, where I'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where I'd dreamed about my future. The house that had been given to a dog was now legally mine. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, like I'd won a game I'd never wanted to play. But that feeling didn't last long, because that afternoon, I got a call from Mom. "Anna Marie, we need to talk. Can you come over tonight? There's been some kind of mistake with the house paperwork." Apparently, they'd tried to take out a home equity loan to pay for Princess's professional training and had discovered that they were no longer the legal owners of their property. "I'll be right over," I said. I drove to the house slowly, taking my time. When I pulled into the driveway, both of my parents were waiting on the front porch. Dad looked confused and frustrated. Mom looked panicked. "What did you do?" Mom asked before I'd even gotten out of the car. "I activated a clause. In the family trust," I said calmly. "The one you both signed 3 years ago." Dad's face went red. "That's impossible. This is our house. We've lived here for 30 years. "Actually, it's my house now, legally and officially." I pulled out my phone and showed them the deed transfer document. "Remember when you asked me to help you set up the trust? You signed papers giving me the right to take ownership if I felt the family property was being misused." "Misused?" Mom's voice was shrill. "How is giving Princess a proper room misusing anything? You gave my childhood bedroom to a dog, Mom. You donated my belongings without asking. You've spent more money on Princess's training than you've ever spent on anything for me. You literally told me I could sleep in the basement when I visit." "That's not the same thing," Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? When Jessica moved back home twice, she got her room back immediately. When Michael needed a place to stay, his room was waiting. But Anna Marie's room? That's prime real estate for the family pet." Mom started crying then, those dramatic tears she'd always used to get her way. "I can't believe you do this to us. Over a room, over something so petty." "It's not about the room," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "It's about what the room represents. It's about being treated like I matter less than a dog. It's about being forgotten and ignored while Princess gets royal treatment." "We never ignored you," Dad said. "You missed my college graduation for Jessica's job interview. You forgot my birthday. You didn't hang my stocking at Christmas. You've helped Jessica with rent while I struggled alone. You've spent thousands on Princess's training while I've never asked you for anything." The silence stretched between us, filled with truths they'd never had to face before. "So what happens now?" Mom asked, her voice small. "Now you're tenants. In my house," I said. "You can stay, but things are going to change. No more major decisions without my approval. No more giving away my things. No more treating me like an inconvenience." "This is blackmail," Dad said. "No, this is consequences. For years, you've shown me exactly how much I matter to this family. Now you get to live with the results of those choices." I walked past them into the house, my house, and headed straight for what used to be my bedroom. Princess was there, curled up on the bed, looking up at me with those innocent eyes. "Hey, girl," I said softly, sitting down beside her. "This isn't your fault, is it? You're just a dog doing what dogs do." She licked my hand, and I felt my heart soften slightly. Princess wasn't the enemy here. She was just a dog who'd been given things I'd been denied. But that didn't mean she got to keep my room. The next morning, I woke up in my studio apartment with a strange sense of clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't wondering what my family thought of me or trying to figure out how to earn their approval. I was thinking about patterns, about all the ways they'd shown me who I was in their hierarchy without me fully recognizing it until now. I made coffee and sat down with a notebook, the same kind I used to write in as a teenager when I'd sit by that bedroom window that now belonged to Princess. I started writing down memories, not to hurt myself with them, but to understand the full scope of what had been happening. The pattern went back further than I'd initially realized. When I was 16 and desperate to take art classes at the community college, Mom had said they couldn't afford it. But 2 weeks later, Jessica got a brand new car for her 17th birthday, a shiny red Honda that cost more than a year of art classes. When I'd pointed this out, Dad had said, "Jessica needs reliable transportation for her job. Art classes are just a hobby." Just a hobby, like my dreams didn't matter as much as Jessica's convenience. I remembered my high school graduation party, the one that wasn't really a party at all. Mom had ordered a sheet cake from the grocery store and invited a few neighbors over for an hour on a Sunday afternoon. When Jessica graduated 2 years later, they rented out the community center, hired a caterer, and invited everyone they knew. "Jessica's going to Stanford," Mom had explained. When I asked about the difference, "This is a bigger milestone." I'd gotten into a good state school too, but apparently that wasn't worth celebrating with the same enthusiasm. The financial inequity was something I'd never added up before. When Michael's car broke down during his senior year of college, Dad immediately cut him a check for repairs and didn't ask for repayment. When my laptop died during finals week my junior year, I'd asked for a loan to buy a replacement. They'd made me sign an actual promissory note and charged me interest. I'd paid back every penny over 6 months, working extra shifts at my campus job. "It's important for you to learn financial responsibility," Dad had said when I'd questioned why I was the only one who had to pay interest on family loans. The more I wrote, the clearer the picture became. There was Jessica, the star child who could do no wrong, whose achievements were celebrated, and whose mistakes were quickly forgiven. There was Michael, the beloved son who was always welcomed, home with open arms, whose struggles were met with immediate financial support. And then there was me, the practical one, the one who was expected to handle things independently, the one whose accomplishments were met with lukewarm acknowledgement, and whose needs were treated as inconveniences. And now there was Princess, who had somehow managed to achieve a higher status in the family hierarchy than I ever had. I thought about Christmas mornings throughout my childhood, how Jessica and Michael would wake up to piles of presents while I'd get 1 or 2 practical gifts. "Anna Marie is easy to shop for," Mom would always say. "She's not materialistic like the others." But I'd never said I didn't want things. I'd just stopped asking for them after years of being told we couldn't afford whatever I wanted, only to watch my siblings get expensive gifts weeks later. The phone rang, interrupting my trip down memory lane. It was Jessica, calling from California, her voice sharp with indignation. "Anna Marie, what the hell is going on? Mom called me crying about some legal paperwork. She says you're trying to steal the house." I took a deep breath before answering. "I'm not stealing anything. I activated a clause in the family trust that makes me the legal owner. It's all completely legitimate." "Over what? Some stupid argument about a dog? Are you having some kind of breakdown?" There it was, the immediate assumption that I must be mentally unstable for standing up for myself. Because that's what they'd always done, dismissed my feelings as overreactions, my concerns as melodrama. "It's not about the dog, Jessica. It's about the fact that they gave my childhood bedroom to Princess while keeping yours as a shrine. It's about being treated like I matter less than a pet." "Oh my God, you're an adult. You don't live there anymore. What do you care what they do with the room? When you moved back home twice, did they give your room away?" Silence. "When Michael needed a place to stay, did they put him in the basement?" More silence. That's what I thought. You've never had to question your place in this family, Jessica. You've never had to wonder if you matter. But I've been questioning it for years, and last week they gave me a very clear answer. They love you, Jessica said, but her voice was less certain now. Do they? Because love isn't just a feeling, it's action. It's how you treat people. And they've shown me exactly how they see me through their actions. So your solution is to steal their house? That's insane, Anna Marie. I didn't steal anything. I used legal documents they signed willingly, documents I set up for them, paid for myself, and managed completely because they trusted me to handle it responsibly. Now they're finding out what responsibility actually looks like. Jessica hung up without saying goodbye, which was typical. She'd never been comfortable with conflict, especially when it might require her to acknowledge uncomfortable truths about the family dynamics that had always favored her. An hour later, Michael called. His approach was different, more manipulative than Jessica's direct confrontation. Hey, sis. I heard there's some confusion about the house. Mom and Dad are really upset. You know how Dad's heart is, right? This kind of stress could really affect his health. The guilt trip. Of course, they'd sent Michael to play the health card. His heart is fine, Michael. He had a mild heart attack 3 years ago and has been perfectly healthy since then. His doctor cleared him for full activity. Still, this kind of family drama isn't good for anyone. Why don't you just reverse whatever you did, and we can all talk this through like adults? I've been trying to talk to them like an adult for years. They don't listen. They never have. Come on, that's not true. You're being dramatic. Dramatic. Another one of their favorite words when it came to my feelings. Michael, when you moved back home the first time, how long did it take them to give you your room back? Maude, that's different. I was going through a divorce. And the second time? I'd lost my job. I needed support. I've never asked to move back home, but I've needed support too. Financial support, emotional support, just basic acknowledgement that I exist and matter. When have they ever provided that? They've always been there for you. Have they? They missed my college graduation. They forgot my birthday. They've helped you financially multiple times but made me sign a promissory note for a laptop loan. They've spent more money on Princess's training than they've ever spent on anything for me. I could hear Michael shifting uncomfortably on the other end of the line. These were facts he couldn't argue with, patterns he'd benefited from but never had to examine. Look, maybe they could have handled some things better, but taking their house isn't the answer. It's not their house anymore, Michael. It's mine. And maybe for the first time in my life, I have some actual power in this family dynamic instead of just being the one who's expected to accept whatever scraps of attention they throw my way. You're really going to hurt them over this? I'm really going to protect myself for once. There's a difference. After Michael hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and thought about their responses. Neither of them had apologized for the years of differential treatment. Neither had acknowledged that there might be validity to my feelings. They'd both immediately jumped to defending the parents and attacking me for responding to years of being minimized. That afternoon, I decided to drive by the house. I wasn't planning to stop, just wanted to see if anything had changed. What I found was a family meeting in full swing. Jessica's BMW was in the driveway next to Michael's truck. Through the front window, I could see all of them gathered in the living room, Princess lying regally on her custom dog bed while my family discussed what to do about the Anna Marie problem. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "We're all here together. Come inside so we can discuss this situation like a family." Like a family. After treating me like an outsider for years, now they wanted to handle things like a family because I held the cards for once. I parked and walked to the front door. Before I could knock, Mom opened it, her eyes red from crying, but her expression determined. "Anna Marie, thank God you're here. We need to sort this out." I walked into the living room where my siblings sat on the couch looking uncomfortable. Dad was in his recliner, arms crossed, expression stern. Princess raised her head when I entered, tail wagging slightly, the only one in the room who seemed genuinely happy to see me. "Sit down," Dad said, gesturing to the dining room chair they'd pulled into the living room. Not the couch with my siblings, not Dad's second recliner, but a hard dining room chair positioned to face everyone else like I was on trial. "I'll stand," I said. "Anna Marie," Mom began, her voice taking on that patient tone she used when she thought she was dealing with a child having a tantrum. "We've been talking and we understand you're upset about the room situation. We can work something out. Maybe Princess can share the space with you when you visit." Share the space with a dog. This was their compromise. "Mom, I don't want to share a bedroom with Princess. I want you to understand why giving my room to a dog was hurtful and disrespectful." "But she's not just a dog," Mom protested. "She's family. She has needs, too." "She has needs, but I don't?" Jessica leaned forward. "Anna Marie, you're being ridiculous. You have your own apartment. You don't need a room here." "Then why? Do you still have your room? Why does Michael? You both have your own places, too." "That's different," Michael said, but he couldn't explain how. Dad cleared his throat. "The point is, this legal maneuver of yours is causing problems for everyone. We need to fix it." "Fix it how?" "You reverse whatever you did, and we'll discuss making some changes to how things are handled around here." "What kind of changes?" They looked at each other uncertainly, clearly not having thought this through beyond getting me to give up my legal position. "Well," Mom said slowly, "we could set up a schedule for Princess's room time. Maybe when you visit, she could stay in the guest room." The guest room. They were willing to temporarily relocate the dog, but not to acknowledge that giving away my room without asking had been wrong in the first place. What about the years of differential treatment? What about the financial inequity? What about the fact that you've consistently shown me that I matter less than everyone else in this family? "We've never shown you that," Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Really? Jessica, how much money have they given you over the years for rent, car payments, and various expenses?" Jessica's face flushed. "That's private." "Michael, how many times have they helped you financially without asking for repayment?" "This isn't about money," Michael muttered. "You're right. It's not about money. It's about respect, consideration, and being treated like I matter. Money is just one way that respect gets expressed." "We do respect you," Mom said. "Do you?" "Because respect means asking before you give away someone's belongings. It means not donating my books without permission. It means acknowledging my achievements with the same enthusiasm you show for everyone else's. It means remembering my birthday and including me in family celebrations." The room went quiet. Princess got up from her bed and walked over to me, sitting down next to my legs like she was offering support. I reached down to pet her, and she leaned into my touch. "Look," Dad said finally, "maybe we haven't always handled things perfectly, but this house situation is extreme. You can't just take someone's home away from them." "I didn't take it away. You gave it to me. You signed legal documents that allowed for this transfer under specific circumstances. Those circumstances were met when you decided to treat me like I didn't belong here." "So what do you want?" Jessica asked, exasperation clear in her voice. I looked around the room at these people who had shaped my entire understanding of family, love, and worth. People who had never seen me clearly, who had consistently minimized my needs while elevating everyone else's. "I want acknowledgement. Real acknowledgement of how you've treated me differently. I want apologies that aren't followed by explanations of why your behavior was justified. I want to know that if I give up my legal position here, things will actually change, not just temporarily, but permanently." "Of course things will change," Mom said quickly. "How? Specifically, how will things change?" They looked at each other again, still not having actual answers. "We'll be more mindful," Dad offered. "More mindful of what?" "Of your feelings. Of making sure you feel included." "That's vague. What does inclusion look like? Does it mean Jessica and Michael don't get financial help that I'm denied? Does it mean my achievements get celebrated the same way theirs do? Does it mean I get consulted before my belongings are disposed of?" The questions hung in the air, unanswered, because they'd never thought about the specific ways they'd excluded me. They'd just expected me to accept whatever level of consideration they felt like offering. "Anna Marie," Michael said, "you're asking us to change decades of family dynamics overnight." "No, I'm asking you to treat me like I matter as much as everyone else. That shouldn't require changing decades of anything. That should just require basic respect." "We've always respected you," Mom insisted. "Have you? When Jessica announced her engagement, you threw her a party with 50 people. When I got promoted to regional manager, you sent a text that said, 'Good for you.' When Michael graduated law school, even though it took him 6 years, you framed his diploma and hung it in the hallway. My master's degree is in a box in my apartment because you never showed enough interest to want to display it." These weren't new grievances I was making up. These were years of accumulated evidence that I had never mattered as much as my siblings. Evidence I'd tried to ignore because I'd wanted so desperately to believe I was wrong. Princess nudged my hand with her nose, and I realized that even this dog, in the few minutes I'd been standing here, had shown me more affection and attention than my family had in months. "You know what?" I said, my voice steady and calm. "Keeps the house. Keep the legal ownership. I don't want it." Their faces brightened with relief. "But," I continued, "I'm done pretending this family works for me. I'm done accepting crumbs and being grateful. I'm done being the practical one, the easy one, the one who doesn't need as much attention or consideration." "What does that mean?" Dad asked. "It means I'm stepping back. No more being available whenever you need something. No more helping with paperwork or legal issues or emergency situations. No more loans or financial assistance. No more accepting differential treatment and pretending it doesn't hurt." "You're cutting us off?" Mom's voice was small. "I'm protecting myself." "There's a difference." I walked over to Princess and knelt down, scratching behind her ears one more time. "Take good care of this room, girl. It's the only one I ever had here." Then I walked toward the door, feeling lighter with each step. "Anna Marie, wait," Jessica called. "Don't you think you're overreacting?" I turned back to look at them. These people who had never understood that their love felt conditional, their acceptance partial, their consideration selective. "For 26 years, I've been underreacting," I said. "I think it's time to try something different." I left them sitting in that living room with Princess and drove home to my small apartment that had never felt more like a sanctuary. For the first time in my life, I wasn't wondering what they thought of me or how I could earn their approval. I was wondering what I thought of them and whether they deserved any more of my energy. The answer was becoming clearer by the hour. 3 weeks passed in blissful silence. No emergency calls from Mom asking me to handle some crisis. No texts from Dad requesting help with paperwork. No guilt-laden messages from Jessica or Michael trying to broker peace talks. For the first time in years, my phone stayed quiet, and I discovered what it felt like to live without the constant undercurrent of family obligation. I threw myself into my work at the marketing firm where I'd been steadily climbing the ladder. Despite my family's lukewarm response to my achievements, my boss, Sandra, noticed the change in my energy immediately. "You seem different lately," she said during our weekly one-on-one meeting. "More focused, more confident." She was right. Without the constant drain of trying to earn my family's approval while managing their emotional needs, I had energy for my own goals again. I'd started taking on bigger projects, speaking up more in meetings, advocating for my ideas with a clarity I'd never had before. "I've made some changes in my personal life," I told her. simplified some things. Sandra nodded approvingly. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. I've been meaning to talk to you about the Portland office expansion. We need someone to lead the market research initiative, and I think you'd be perfect for it. A promotion opportunity. A real one, with significant responsibility and a salary increase that would finally let me move out of my studio apartment above the coffee shop. 6 months ago, I would have immediately started worrying about how a bigger role might affect my availability to help my family. Now I felt nothing but excitement. I'm very interested, I said. Good. Put together a presentation for next week's executive meeting. Show me what you're thinking for market penetration strategy. I left that meeting energized in a way I hadn't felt since college. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based purely on what I wanted, not on how those decisions might impact my family's opinion of me or my availability to solve their problems. That evening, I was working on my presentation when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Mom's number, and I stared at it for several rings before deciding to answer. Hi, Mom. Anna Marie, thank goodness you picked up. I wasn't sure you would. Her voice sounded strained, tired. Part of me immediately wanted to ask what was wrong, to slip back into my old role as the family problem solver. But I caught myself. What can I do for you? Well, we have a bit of a situation here. Princess is sick. The vet says she needs surgery, and it's going to be quite expensive. We were hoping. That is, we were wondering if you might be able to help us with the cost. I almost laughed out loud. After everything that had happened, after making it clear that I was stepping back from being their financial safety net, they were calling to ask for money for the dog who had displaced me. How much are we talking about? $8,000. It's her hip, apparently. The vet says without surgery she'll be in pain and won't be able to compete anymore. $8,000 for hip surgery for a dog. The same amount I'd saved for a down payment on a condo, money I'd accumulated by living in my tiny apartment and skipping vacations for 2 years. That's a lot of money, Mom. I know, but she's family. We can't just let her suffer, and you know how much she means to us. Family. The word that had been weaponized against me for years, used to justify my differential treatment while simultaneously demanding my loyalty and resources. Have you asked Jessica and Michael to contribute? A pause. Well, Jessica is saving. For her wedding, and Michael just bought that new truck. We didn't want to burden them with financial stress. But burdening me was perfectly acceptable, apparently. Even after everything that had happened, even after I'd explicitly told them I was done being their financial backup plan, they still saw me as the one who should sacrifice for everyone else's comfort. Mom, I told you 3 weeks ago that I was stepping back from family financial obligations. But this is different. This is about Princess. She's innocent in all of this family drama. Family drama. That's what they were calling years of systematic neglect and favoritism. Drama. As if my feelings were theatrical overreactions rather than legitimate responses to their behavior. Princess is innocent, I agreed. But she's not my responsibility. You chose to get a dog. You chose to enter her in expensive competitions. You chose to give her my room and treat her like royalty. Those were your decisions, and the financial consequences are yours to handle. Anna Marie, please, we wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. The vet says she needs the surgery within the next 2 weeks, or the damage could be permanent. I closed my laptop and walked to my window, looking out at the street below where people were walking their dogs, living their normal lives without the weight of dysfunctional family expectations. Did you call Jessica first? What? When you realized Princess needed expensive surgery, who did you call first? Jessica, Michael, or me? Another pause, longer this time. We called you first. Why? Because you're good with these kinds of situations. You always know how to handle things. No. Not because I was good with situations. Because I was the reliable one, the one who said yes, the one who could be counted on to sacrifice my own needs for everyone else's comfort. I'm not giving you money for Princess's surgery. Anna Marie, please reconsider. We're talking about her quality of life here. No, Mom. We're talking about choices and consequences. You've chosen to prioritize Princess over me for years. You've chosen to spend thousands on her training and comfort while treating me like an afterthought. You've chosen to give her my childhood room while expecting me to be grateful for basement accommodations. Now you get to choose how to pay for her medical care without involving me. That's cruel. Is it? Or is it finally treating you the way you've treated me? Like someone whose problems aren't automatically my responsibility to solve. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line, and despite everything, it still tugged at my heart. But I'd learned the difference between feeling bad about someone's pain and being responsible for fixing it. There has to be something we can work out, she said through her tears. Some kind of payment plan or loan arrangement. There is. You can get a loan from a bank. You can ask Jessica and Michael to contribute despite their other financial priorities. You can sell some of Princess's expensive equipment or trophies. You can take out a second mortgage. You have options that don't involve me. None of those are realistic. You know Jessica and Michael don't have that kind of money readily available. But I do. Mom, I live in a studio apartment above a coffee shop. I drive a 10-year-old Honda. I haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years. What makes you think I have $8,000 just sitting around? You've always been so good with money. So responsible. Responsible. There was that word again. The one they use to justify expecting more from me while giving less in return. I am responsible. With my own money, for my own priorities. Princess isn't one of those priorities. The conversation ended with Mom hanging up after telling me she hoped I'd reconsider, that family was supposed to help family, that she never thought she'd see the day when I'd turn my back on them in their time of need. Their time of need. As if my needs had ever warranted the same consideration. 2 days later, Jessica called. Anna Marie, I can't believe you're refusing to help with Princess's surgery. Mom is devastated. Mom is devastated that I won't pay for her dog's hip surgery. Let me ask you something, Jessica. How much are you contributing? I told you I'm saving for my wedding. David and I have already put deposits down on everything. We can't just redirect that money. But I can redirect mine. That's different. You don't have major life events coming up. I thought about the promotion opportunity, about the presentation I was preparing, about the down payment I'd been saving for my own place. Apparently, none of that qualified as a major life event worthy of protecting. Actually, I do have major things coming up. I'm being considered for a significant promotion at work, and I'm saving for a house down payment. Those are my priorities. A promotion isn't the same as a wedding. Why not? Why is your career advancement less important than your social event? It's not a social event. It's my wedding. It's one of the most important days of my life. And my career growth isn't important to you at all? Silence. Jessica, let me make this simple. I'm not contributing to Princess's surgery costs. If you want to help the dog, write a check. If you don't, don't. But stop trying to guilt me into being the family bank account. Michael said you've become really cold lately. I've become boundaried. There's a difference. Same thing, apparently. She hung up, leaving me to wonder when protecting my own interests had become synonymous with being cold. When had saying no to unreasonable demands become a character, flaw rather than a sign of healthy self-respect? The next week brought my presentation to the executive team. I'd put together a comprehensive market analysis and expansion strategy that I was genuinely proud of. The presentation went better than I'd hoped, with several executives asking detailed questions that showed they were seriously considering my proposal. Impressive work, Anna Marie, said the regional director. We'll have a decision for you. by Friday. That afternoon, I was riding the high of professional success when my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Princess had her surgery. Jessica and I split the cost. Hope you're happy that your own family had to go into debt while you sat on your savings. I stared at that message for a long time, trying to process the audacity of it. They'd found a way to pay for the surgery without me, proving that my contribution hadn't been necessary at all. But instead of recognizing that they'd manipulated me with false urgency and desperation, Michael was trying to make me feel guilty for not falling for it. I texted back, "I'm glad Princess got the care she needed. I'm also glad you both found a way to prioritize her well-being with your own resources." His response came immediately. "We shouldn't have had to. You used to care about this family. I used to enable this family. There's a difference." No response to that. Friday brought the news I'd been hoping for. Sandra called me into her office with a smile that told me everything before she said a word. "Congratulations, you got the Portland position. The executive team was unanimous. They loved your presentation and think you're exactly what we need to establish our presence in the Pacific Northwest." The salary increase was substantial, enough to afford a real apartment with actual rooms and maybe even a small house within. A few years. The position came with a team of 5 people reporting to me and the autonomy to build the market strategy from the ground up. "When would you need me to start? Is 6 weeks enough time for you to relocate? We'll cover all moving expenses, of course, plus provide a relocation bonus. 6 weeks to start a new life in a new city, far enough from my family's drama, but close enough to visit if I ever wanted to." It felt like the universe was offering me exactly what I needed. 6 weeks is perfect. That evening I celebrated, alone in my tiny apartment with a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. As I sat on my small balcony, looking out at the city lights, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: genuine excitement about my future. My phone rang around 9. It was Dad. "Anna Marie, your mother told me about your conversation regarding Princess's surgery." "Okay. I want you to know that I'm disappointed in your decision. That dog has been nothing but loving and loyal to this family." "Unlike me, you mean?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Dad, let me ask you something. When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? Not because you needed something, not because there was a crisis, but just to check in on your daughter's life?" A long pause. "We've all been busy with our own lives." "Have you? Because you've managed to stay involved in Jessica's life and Michael's life. You know about Jessica's wedding planning. You helped Michael when he bought his truck. But when was the last time you asked me about my job, or my goals, or my relationships? You've always been so independent. We didn't want to interfere." Independent, another word they used to justify their neglect, as if my ability to handle things on my own meant I didn't deserve the same care and attention they lavished on my siblings. "Dad, I got a promotion this week, a big one. I'm moving to Portland to run a new office." "That's nice, honey. When did this happen?" "The official offer came today. I've been working toward it for months. Portland is far." "Yes, it is. Your mother won't like having you so far away. Mom will probably barely notice. She'll be too busy with Princess's recovery and Jessica's wedding plans." "That's not fair, isn't it? When have either of you shown genuine interest in my life that wasn't related to what I could do for you? We care about you, Anna Marie. We've always cared about you. You care about the version of me that's useful to you, the one who handles crises and provides financial backup and doesn't ask for much in return. But you've never cared about who I actually am or what I actually want." "That's not true." "Then tell me about my life, Dad. Tell me about my job, my friends, my interests, my dreams. Tell me anything about who I am as a person beyond my utility to this family." Another long pause. "You're being unfair. You've never shared much. about your personal life. I've tried. For years I've tried. But every conversation gets redirected to someone else's drama or problems or achievements. Every family gathering revolves around Jessica's success or Michael's struggles or Princess's latest accomplishment. When do we ever talk about me? We're talking about you now. No, we're talking about your disappointment in me for not paying. For your dog's surgery. That's not the same thing. I could hear him sighing heavily on the other end of the line. What do you want from us, Anna Marie? What would it take for you to be part of this family again? I want you to see me. Really, see me. Not as a problem solver or a financial resource or the practical one who doesn't need attention. I want you to care about my life with the same enthusiasm you show for everyone else's. I want to matter as much as Jessica, Michael, and Princess. You do matter. Do I? Because your actions suggest otherwise. Your words say I matter, but your behavior says I'm an afterthought. So you're moving to Portland to punish us? I'm moving to Portland because I got an amazing job opportunity that will advance my career and improve my life. The fact that it also puts distance between me and a family that doesn't appreciate me is just a bonus. Your mother is going to be heartbroken. Mom has Jessica, Michael, and Princess to focus on. She'll be fine. What if we need you for something? And there it was. Not concern for losing me as a daughter, but worry about losing me as a resource. You'll figure it out the same way other families do. You'll handle your own problems or ask Jessica and Michael for help. They can't do the things you do. Then maybe it's time they learned. Maybe it's time everyone in this family started carrying their own weight instead of expecting me to be available for every crisis. This isn't how family is supposed to work. You're right. Family is supposed to be reciprocal. Family is supposed to involve mutual care and consideration. Family is supposed to celebrate each other's successes and support each other's dreams. But that's not what we've had, Dad. What we've had is me giving and everyone else taking. We've supported you. How? Give me one example of how you've supported my dreams or goals or aspirations. Silence. Dad, I'm moving to Portland in 6 weeks. I'm going to build a life that makes me happy. If you want to be part of that life, you're welcome to try. But it will require you to see me as a whole person, not just as someone who exists to solve your problems. What does that mean practically? It means calling to ask how I'm doing, not just when you need something. It means showing interest in my achievements. It means treating me with the same consideration you show Jessica and Michael. It means recognizing that I have needs and feelings that matter. We can try to do better. I hope so. But Dad, I'm not going to keep setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. Those days are over. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment and realized something profound had shifted inside me. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't anxiously waiting for their approval or desperately hoping they'd finally see my worth. I was planning my future based on what I wanted, and their opinion of those plans was irrelevant. The next morning, I started looking at apartments in Portland, feeling genuinely excited about the prospect of starting fresh in a city where no one knew me as the family disappointment or the one who was supposed to fix everyone's problems. I was just Anna Marie, a successful marketing professional with a bright future ahead of her. I was finally becoming the person I'd always had the potential to be, once I stopped trying to earn love from people who had never been capable of giving it freely. Moving day arrived with the kind of crisp October morning that made everything feel possible. I stood in my empty studio apartment, keys in one hand, forwarding a dress form in the other, and felt something I'd never experienced before: complete ownership of my choices. No family guilt weighing down my decisions. No obligation to consider how my life changes might inconvenience anyone else. The moving truck had left an hour earlier, loaded with my modest collection of furniture and the boxes of books that had once been deemed unworthy of shelf space in my childhood home. Everything I owned was heading west to Portland, and I was about to follow in my newly purchased Honda CR-V, a celebration gift to myself for landing the promotion. My phone had been quiet all morning, which felt like a small miracle. No last-minute crisis calls. No guilt-laden texts about abandoning the family. No emergency requests for help with something that couldn't wait until after my cross-country move. For the first time in my adult life, I was allowed to have a major life transition without it being overshadowed by someone else's drama. I was loading my final suitcase into the car when Mrs. Chen from the coffee shop below knocked on my door. "Anna Marie, honey, I wanted to catch you before you left." She handed me a small wrapped package. "A little something for your new adventure." Inside was a beautiful ceramic mug with Portland painted in elegant script, along with a bag of her special blend coffee beans. "You've been the best tenant we've ever had," she said, her eyes warm with genuine affection. "Quiet, respectful, always paid your rent early. I'm going to miss having you upstairs." The simple kindness of her gesture hit me unexpectedly hard. This woman, who barely knew me beyond our brief interactions when I picked up my mail, was showing me more consideration for my major life change than my own family had. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. This means more than you know. You call me when you get settled, okay? I want to hear all about your new job." I promised I would, and as I drove away from that building, I realized I was leaving behind the first place that had ever felt truly mine. My tiny apartment had been cramped and noisy, but it had been my sanctuary, free from the complicated dynamics and impossible expectations that had defined my family relationships. The drive to Portland took 3 days, with overnight stops in Kansas City and Salt Lake City. I'd never traveled alone for such a distance, had never made such a significant life decision without consulting everyone else's opinion first. The freedom was intoxicating. On the second day, somewhere in Colorado, Jessica called. "Anna Marie, where are you?" Mom tried calling and it went straight to voicemail. "I'm driving to Portland. My phone probably lost signal in the mountains." "You're really doing this then? Actually moving away?" "I told you I was. The movers came yesterday." "I thought maybe you'd change your mind. Maybe realize you were being dramatic about everything." Dramatic. Still, after everything, my legitimate feelings were being dismissed as theatrical overreactions. "Jessica, I got a promotion that most people in my field would kill for. I'm moving to one of the most beautiful cities in the country to lead a new team and build something from the ground up. In what world is that dramatic?" "You know what I mean. This whole thing about not feeling appreciated or whatever. Running away isn't going to solve anything." "I'm not running away. I'm running towards something better." "What about family obligations? What if something happens to Mom and Dad? What if they need you?" "Then they'll call Jessica and Michael, or they'll handle it themselves like adults. I'm not the only capable person in this family. I'm just the only one who's been expected to drop everything whenever someone needs help." "That's not fair. We all help out when we can." "When you can. When it's convenient. When it doesn't interfere with your other priorities. I've been helping out regardless of whether I could afford it, whether it was convenient, whether I had other priorities." "So you're punishing us by moving across the country?" "I'm living my life. The fact that you see that as punishment says more about this family dynamic than anything I could explain." The call ended with Jessica telling me I was being selfish. That family was supposed to come first, that she hoped I'd realize my mistake before it was too late to fix things. But as I hung up and continued driving through the stunning Colorado landscape, I felt nothing but relief that I was putting distance between myself and people who saw my success as a betrayal. Portland welcomed me with rain and possibility. The apartment I'd rented sight unseen turned out to be perfect, a one-bedroom place in the Pearl District with exposed brick walls, tall windows, and enough space for all my books plus room to grow. For the first time in my adult life, I had a real bedroom, a proper kitchen, and a living room that wasn't also my sleeping space. The moving truck arrived that afternoon, and as I watched the movers carry in my furniture, I realized how little I actually owned. My entire life fit into a few hours of unpacking. But instead of feeling sad about that, I felt liberated. I was starting fresh with only the things that actually mattered to me. My new office was downtown in a gleaming building with views of the Willamette River. The team I'd be managing was small but experienced, and they welcomed me with the kind of professional enthusiasm I'd rarely experienced. Sarah, my assistant, had prepared a comprehensive briefing packet about the local market conditions and potential client prospects. "I've set up meetings with 5 potential clients for next week," she said as she walked me through the schedule. "And the regional director wants to take you to lunch tomorrow to discuss quarterly targets." This was what professional respect looked like: preparation, consideration, investment in my success. The contrast with my family's lukewarm response to my achievements was stark. That evening, I unpacked my kitchen boxes and cooked myself dinner, in my actual kitchen with actual counter space. As I sat at my small dining table eating pasta and looking out at the city lights, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Anna Marie, honey, how was your drive? Did you make it safely?" The genuine concern in her voice caught me off guard. This was the first time in months she'd called just to check on my well-being without needing something from me. "The drive was beautiful. I made it to Portland this morning. I'm in my new apartment now." "How is it? The apartment, I mean." "It's wonderful. Small but perfect for me. It has big windows and enough space for all my furniture." "That's nice. Dear, and the job? When do you start?" "Tomorrow. I'm meeting my team and getting oriented." "I'm sure you'll do wonderfully. You always were so good at new challenges." The conversation felt strange, like we were playing at being a normal mother and daughter. She was asking appropriate questions and expressing appropriate interest, but it felt performative rather than genuine. "How's Princess doing after her surgery?" "Oh, she's recovering well, still limping a bit, but the vet says that's normal. She misses having someone around during the day, though. Your father and I are both at work, and she gets lonely." There. It was. The subtle suggestion that my presence was needed, that my absence was causing problems. "Maybe you could look into doggy daycare or hire a pet sitter." Those are so expensive, though. Of course they were. Everything that might solve their problems without involving me was too expensive, too complicated, too much trouble. But expecting me to uproot my life and career to babysit their dog was perfectly reasonable. "Mom, I'm building a new life here. I can't be available to help with day-to-day things anymore." "I know, honey. I understand. I just miss having you close." The conversation ended pleasantly enough, but I hung up feeling unsettled. The call had felt like a test, like she was probing to see if I was weakening in my resolve, if distance might make me more amenable to returning to my old role. My first week at work exceeded every expectation I'd had. The team was smart and motivated. The clients were engaged and excited about our proposals, and my boss gave me the kind of autonomy I'd only dreamed about in my previous position. By Friday, I'd secured 2 new accounts and outlined an expansion strategy that had the regional director talking about fast-tracking our growth timeline. "You're exactly what we needed here," he told me during our weekly check-in. "Someone who can think strategically while executing tactically. How are you settling into the city?" "I love it here. It feels like home already." "Good. We're hoping you'll be here for the long haul. There's talk about creating a West Coast regional position in the next year or 2, and your name has already come up in those discussions." A regional position, the kind of career advancement that would have been impossible in my old role, where I'd been steady and reliable but never given opportunities to shine. Here, I was being recognized for my potential rather than just my competence. That weekend, I explored my new city. I walked through Powell's Books, the largest independent bookstore I'd ever seen, and bought myself 3 novels I'd been wanting to read. I hiked in Forest Park, amazed by the old-growth trees minutes from downtown. I visited the Saturday market and bought fresh flowers for my apartment. For the first time in my adult life, my weekend was entirely my own. No family obligations, no emergency calls, no guilt about focusing on my own happiness. I could pursue my own interests without worrying about whether I was being selfish or inconsiderate. On Sunday afternoon, as I was arranging my new flowers, in a vase I'd bought at the market, Michael called. "Hey sis, how's the new city treating you?" His voice was more casual than usual, less loaded with family drama. "It's amazing here. I love the job, love the apartment, love the whole vibe of the city." "That's great, really great. Listen, I wanted to apologize for some of the things I said when you were dealing with the house situation. I think I was too focused on keeping the peace instead of really listening to what you were saying." This was unexpected. Michael had never apologized for anything related to family dynamics before. "Thank you. That means a lot to hear. I've been thinking about some of the stuff you said, about the different ways we've all been treated. You were right about a lot of it. I never had to sign promissory notes for loans, and I never had to worry about whether my achievements would be celebrated." The admission felt like a small breakthrough, an acknowledgement that the differential treatment I'd experienced wasn't just my imagination. "It's not that I was jealous of you or Jessica," I said. "I just wanted the same consideration, the same assumption that my needs mattered too." "Yeah, I get that now. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." "What made you realize it?" "Honestly, Princess getting sick. Watching Mom and Dad panic about her medical bills while expecting you to just handle it financially. It was fucked up, Anna Marie. They called you first, before they even looked into their own options for payment." Hearing Michael acknowledge the absurdity of the situation felt validating in a way I hadn't expected. "They've always done that, though. Made me the first call for every crisis while treating everyone else's problems as emergencies that require immediate family mobilization." I know, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up about it before. I think I was too comfortable being the golden boy to want to rock the boat. How are things there now? With Mom and Dad, I mean. Tense. They're having to handle a lot of stuff they usually dumped on you. Dad tried to do his own taxes this year and got completely overwhelmed. Mom's been asking Jessica and me to help with things, but we're not as good at it as you were. Not as good at it, or not as willing to drop everything to fix their problems? Both, honestly. You spoiled them. They got used to having someone who would always say yes, who would always figure out solutions for them. It was a harsh but accurate assessment. I had trained my family to see me as their personal emergency response system, always available, always capable, always willing to sacrifice my own priorities for theirs. "How's Princess doing?" "She's fine. Back to her normal self, actually. But Mom's still worried about her constantly. She's talking about getting security cameras installed so she can watch Princess during the day." "Security cameras for a dog?" "That's what I said. But you know how she gets when she fixates on something." I did know. Mom had a tendency to create elaborate solutions to simple problems, especially when those solutions allowed her to avoid addressing underlying issues. "Michael, can I ask you something honestly?" "Sure." "Do you think they'll ever actually change how they treat me? Or are they just waiting for me to come back and resume my old role?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I think they want you to come back and resume your old role. I don't think they understand that the old role was the problem. That's what I was afraid of. But, Anna Marie, maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't need them to change. Maybe you just need to keep living your life and let them figure out how to function without depending on you." It was wise advice from someone I'd never expected to show such insight into family dynamics. "How's Jessica handling everything?" "She's stressed. Wedding planning plus work, plus mom asking her to handle stuff she's not equipped for. She called me crying last week because she couldn't figure out how to handle some insurance paperwork mom needed help with. Part of me felt a flicker of sympathy for Jessica, but it was quickly replaced by a more complex emotion. She was experiencing what I'd felt for years. The weight of family expectations combined with tasks I'd never been prepared for. The difference was that Jessica had options. She could say no, set boundaries, delegate to other family members. I'd never been given those same options. Maybe this will be good for everyone, I said. Maybe you'll all learn skills you never had to develop before. Maybe, or maybe we'll all just muddle through and everything will fall apart. Families don't usually fall apart just because one person stops being everyone's personal assistant. This family might. The comment hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Was Michael suggesting that I'd been the only thing holding the family together? That my role as problem solver and emergency responder had been so central that my absence might cause everything to collapse? Michael, if this family can't function without me handling everyone's crises, then maybe it was never as functional as we thought. Yeah, he said quietly. I think you might be right about that. After we hung up, I sat in my living room, surrounded by my unpacked books, and felt something I'd never experienced before. Gratitude for my family's dysfunction. Their inability to appreciate me had forced me to appreciate myself. Their refusal to see my worth had taught me to value my own contributions. Their expectation that I sacrifice my dreams for their convenience had finally pushed me to prioritize my own happiness. The next week brought news that would test my newfound boundaries in ways I hadn't anticipated. I was in the middle of a client presentation when my phone started buzzing repeatedly. When I finally checked it during a break, I found 6 missed calls from Jessica and 3 voicemails. The first voicemail was frantic. Anna Marie, call me back immediately. It's about Dad. The second was more specific. Dad's in the hospital. He had some kind of episode at work. Mom's a mess and doesn't know what to do. We need you to come home. The third was accusatory. I can't believe you're not answering your phone when your family needs you. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen when you moved away. My hands were shaking as I called Jessica back. Thank God you finally called. Dad's in the emergency room. They think he might have had another heart attack. Is he okay? What are the doctors saying? They're running tests. Mom's completely falling apart. She keeps asking when you're coming home. Coming home. Not visiting, not helping during a crisis, but coming home. As if my moving to Portland had been a temporary tantrum rather than a permanent life change. Jessica, I can't just drop everything and fly to Denver. I have responsibilities here. Responsibilities? Anna Marie, this is Dad we're talking about. This is family. I understand this is serious, but I'm in the middle of launching a new office, managing a new team, and building relationships with new clients. I can't abandon all of that without knowing more about Dad's actual condition. What kind of daughter are you? Your father might be dying and you're worried about work. The guilt hit me like a physical blow, but underneath it was something new, anger. Jessica had never been expected to drop everything for family emergencies. When Dad had his first heart attack 3 years ago, Jessica had been traveling for work and hadn't changed her plans. But somehow, I was expected to be available for every potential crisis, no matter where I was or what I was doing. Jessica, put Mom on the phone. I want to talk to her directly. She's too upset to talk. Then put Michael on the phone. He's not here yet. He's driving down from Boulder. What exactly are the doctors saying about Dad's condition? They're not telling us anything. They just keep saying they need to run more tests. I took a deep breath and tried to think clearly through the panic and guilt Jessica was projecting. Okay, here's what I can do. I'll call the hospital directly and speak to Dad's doctor to get a clear picture of his condition. If it's serious, If he actually needs surgery or if there's a real crisis, I'll figure out how to get there. But I'm not flying across the country based on vague reports and emotional hysteria. Emotional hysteria? Your father is in the hospital and you're calling it hysteria? I'm calling your reaction hysteria, Jessica. You've given me no concrete information about Dad's actual condition, just demands that I drop everything and come home immediately. Fine, don't come. But don't expect anyone to forgive you if something happens to him and you weren't here. She hung up, leaving me standing in an empty conference room in Portland, my heart racing and my mind spinning with competing loyalties and responsibilities. I called the hospital and after being transferred 3 times, finally reached someone who could give me actual information about Dad's condition. He'd had what appeared to be a panic attack, not a heart attack. His EKG was normal. His blood pressure was elevated but not dangerously so, and they were keeping him for observation as a precautionary measure. A panic attack. All of Jessica's drama, all of the guilt and manipulation about family loyalty and daughterly duty over what was essentially a stress response that would resolve itself within hours. I called Jessica back. I spoke to Dad's doctor. He's fine. It was a panic attack, not a heart attack. He'll probably be discharged tonight. How could you call the hospital? You're not even here. I'm his daughter. I have the right to information about his condition. Why didn't you get this information yourself instead of panicking and demanding I drop everything to rush home? We were scared. When someone goes to the hospital, you assume the worst. No, Jessica. When someone goes to the hospital, you get information before making demands on other people's lives. Well, he's still in the hospital. He's still our father. Don't you want to be here for him? Of course I want Dad to be okay. But I also want to maintain the life I've built for myself. I can care about Dad's health without sacrificing my career advancement every time there's a medical scare. Since when did you become so selfish? There was that word again. Selfish. The weapon they used whenever I prioritized my own needs or refused to drop everything for their convenience. Since I realized that putting my family first meant putting myself last, and I'm done being last in my own life. That evening, I called Dad directly. He was back home, sounding embarrassed and tired. Anna Marie, I'm sorry about all the fuss today. Jessica and your mother got carried away. How are you feeling, Dad? Foolish, mostly. It was just work stress getting to me. I thought I was having heart problems, but the doctors said it was just anxiety. What's causing the work stress? Oh, end of quarter deadlines, some difficult clients. Nothing I can't handle. But as we talked, a different picture emerged. Dad was struggling with tasks at work that he'd never had to manage before. Apparently, I'd been helping him with certain aspects of his job for years without realizing it. Tax preparation, client communications, organizational systems, all things I'd handled for him during evenings and weekends because he'd seemed overwhelmed. Dad, maybe you should consider delegating some of these tasks to other people at work instead of trying to handle everything yourself. It's not that simple. These are things I should be able to do. Should according to who? If there are aspects of your job that cause you stress, there's no shame in getting help with them. Your mother thinks I should ask you to come back and help me get organized again. And there it was, the real agenda behind the hospital drama. They wanted me to come back, not for a visit, but to resume my old role of managing everyone's problems. Dad, I can't do that. I have a new job, a new life. I can't be your organizational system anymore. I understand. I just don't know how to manage all this stuff without you. You'll figure it out, or you'll find other solutions. But those solutions can't involve me relocating my entire life to solve your work problems. What if I really need you, though? What if there's a real emergency? Then you'll call me, and I'll help however I can from here. But Dad, most of what you think you need me for, you can probably handle yourself or get help with locally. After we hung up, I sat in my beautiful apartment in my chosen city and realized something profound. The hospital scare hadn't made me want to rush home. It had made me more grateful than ever for the distance I'd created. I'd been able to get accurate information, provide appropriate support, and maintain my own life boundaries all at the same time. For the first time, I'd handled a family crisis without sacrificing my own priorities, and the world hadn't ended. Dad was fine. The family had functioned without me, and I'd proven to myself that caring about my family didn't require abandoning my own life. It was a revelation that would change everything about how I approached family relationships going forward. Spring in Portland arrived with a burst of cherry blossoms and possibility. I'd been in the city for 6 months, and my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined when I'd first driven away from Denver, with everything I owned packed into my Honda. The regional director had fast-tracked my promotion timeline, and I was now officially managing the entire Pacific Northwest expansion, with offices planned for Seattle and Boise under my oversight. My apartment had evolved too, filled with plants that thrived in the Pacific Northwest climate and artwork I'd collected from local galleries. I had friends now, real friends who knew me as Anna Marie, the marketing director, not Anna Marie, the family problem solver. There was Rebecca from my hiking group, who shared my love of true crime podcasts and terrible reality TV. There was Marcus from work, who'd become my favorite dinner companion and debate partner. There was Elena from my yoga class, who'd introduced me to the city's incredible food scene. These weren't relationships built on necessity or obligation. They were connections formed through shared interests and genuine enjoyment of each other's company. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't constantly wondering if people liked me or if I was doing enough to maintain their approval. These friendships felt effortless in a way family relationships never had. My phone rang less frequently now. The emergency calls had stopped entirely after I'd made it clear that my availability was limited and my responses would be measured. Mom still called occasionally, usually with updates about Princess or complaints about various inconveniences that she used to expect me to solve. But the conversations were shorter now, less loaded with expectation and manipulation. On a particularly beautiful Tuesday morning, as I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office, Sarah knocked on my door with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Anna Marie, there's someone here to see you. She says she's your sister." Jessica stood in the reception area wearing a designer suit and an uncomfortable smile. She looked older somehow, more tired than I remembered, and there was something tentative in her posture that I'd never seen before. "Jessica, this is unexpected. I was in Seattle for a conference and thought I'd drive down to see how you're doing. I hope that's okay." It wasn't okay, not really. Jessica showing up unannounced at my workplace felt like a boundary violation, an assumption that she could access my new life whenever it was convenient for her. But I was curious about what had brought her here. "Let me finish up a few things, and then we can grab coffee." An hour later, we sat in my favorite cafe, a few blocks from the office. Jessica looked around at the bustling space filled with laptop-wielding freelancers and artfully disheveled college students. "This is very Portland," she said, and I couldn't tell if she meant it as a compliment or criticism. "I love it. Here. The energy, the creativity, the fact that people mind their own business." Speaking of minding your own business, you've certainly mastered that skill lately. And there it was, the subtle accusation disguised as casual conversation. "If you're here to guilt me about something, Jessica, you've wasted a trip. I'm not interested in relitigating my decision to build a life that works for me. I'm not here to guilt you. I'm here because I wanted to see you, and because I owe you an apology." This was unexpected. Jessica had never apologized for anything related to our family dynamics. An apology for what? For not supporting you when you were trying to explain how differently you were being treated. For dismissing your feelings as dramatic. For expecting you to always be available to solve everyone's problems while never offering to help solve yours. The admission hung between us, more surprising than anything she could have said. What brought this on? Jessica sighed and wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. Planning this wedding has been a nightmare. Not because of David or the logistics, but because of Mom. She's inserted herself into every decision, criticized every choice, and somehow made my wedding about her. Stress and anxiety. That sounds familiar. It is familiar. It's exactly what she's always done to you, except now she's doing it to me too. And Michael. What do you mean? Since you've been gone, we've become her new crisis managers. Every problem that she used to dump on you, she now expects us to handle. And we're terrible at it, Anna Marie. We don't have your patience or your organizational skills or your willingness to drop everything whenever she has a meltdown. I felt a complex mix of validation and sympathy. Validation that my family was finally experiencing what I'd dealt with for years, and sympathy because I knew how exhausting it was to be someone's emotional dumping ground. How's that working out for everyone? It's not. Michael and I fight constantly about whose turn it is to handle Mom's latest crisis. Dad's still struggling with basic tasks at work and keeps asking if we know how to do things you used to help him with. And Mom has appointed herself the wedding coordinator from hell, micromanaging everything while somehow making herself the victim in every situation. And how do you feel about all that? Overwhelmed, resentful, tired, like I'm drowning in other people's problems while my own life gets pushed to the side. She paused, looking out the window at the street scene beyond. I get it now. I understand why you left. We turned you into our personal assistant, and then got mad when you quit. The acknowledgement felt both satisfying and sad. I'd spent years trying to explain these feelings to my family, only to be dismissed or minimized. Now Jessica understood, but only because she was experiencing it herself. I'm glad you get it. Now. But I'm sorry you had to experience it to understand it. Are you? Sorry, I mean. I considered the question honestly. I'm sorry that you're stressed and overwhelmed. I'm not sorry that you're finally understanding what I went through. That's fair. We probably deserve to experience some of what we put you through. It's not about deserving anything, Jessica. It's about natural consequences. When you rely too heavily on one person to solve all your problems, and that person becomes unavailable, you have to learn to solve them yourself. Or fall apart trying. Are you falling apart? Sometimes. Last week I had a complete breakdown in Target because Mom called while I was shopping for wedding favors to tell me that Princess had eaten something she shouldn't have and needed to go to the emergency vet. She expected me to leave work, pick up Princess, take her to the vet and handle the whole situation. What did you do? I told her to call Michael or Dad, and she said they were both busy. So I asked her why her being busy wasn't an option, and she started crying about how I was being cruel to her in her time of need. I could picture the entire scene perfectly. The manufactured urgency, the assumption that Jessica would drop everything, the emotional manipulation when boundaries were set. How did it end? I told her I'd call her back in an hour and hung up. Then I finished my shopping, went home, and called her back to find out that Dad had taken Princess to the vet, and she was fine. The whole crisis was resolved without me, just like most of them could be. And how did that make you feel? Angry, really angry, because I realized she could have solved it herself from the beginning. She just wanted someone else to handle it so she didn't have to deal with the inconvenience. And welcome to my world for the past decade. How did you stand it for so long? I thought about that question carefully. How had I stood it? Why had I accepted being the family's designated problem solver for so many years? I think I was afraid that if I stopped being useful, I'd stop being loved. I thought my value to the family was tied to my willingness to sacrifice for everyone else. Was it? Apparently. Look how they reacted when I stopped being available for every crisis. But you're happier now, right? Without all that chaos? I looked around the cafe, at the life I'd built in this city where no one expected me to be anything other than myself. I'm so much happier, Jessica. I had no idea how much energy I was spending on managing everyone else's emotions and problems. Now I use that energy for my own goals and relationships. Do you miss us at all? The question was asked quietly, with genuine vulnerability. I miss the idea of having a close, supportive family. I miss the version of you all that I always hoped you could become. But I don't miss the actual dynamics we had. What would it take for you to want to be part of the family again? I'd been thinking about this question for months, wondering what conditions would need to exist for me to consider rebuilding those relationships. Genuine change, not temporary modifications designed to get me back, but real, sustained change in how we treat each other. Equal consideration, reciprocal support, respect for boundaries. That sounds reasonable. It is reasonable, but it would require everyone to examine their own behavior and make permanent adjustments. It would mean Mom couldn't use emotional manipulation to get her way. It would mean Dad couldn't expect me to handle his responsibilities. It would mean you and Michael couldn't delegate family obligations to me while protecting your own time and energy. I do think we're capable of that kind of change. I don't know. Are you? Jessica was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee. I want to be. This wedding planning process has shown me how exhausting it is to be someone's designated crisis manager. I don't want to be that person for Mom, and I'm starting to understand why you refuse to be that person anymore. What does that mean, practically? It means I'm setting boundaries, real ones. I told Mom she gets one wedding-related crisis call per week, and if she exceeds that limit, I'm putting her on temporary communication restrictions. I almost laughed at the absurdity of having to set crisis call limits with a parent, but I was also impressed that Jessica was implementing concrete boundaries. How's she handling that? About as well as you'd expect. Lots of dramatic reactions about how I'm abandoning her in her time of need. But I'm holding firm. Good for you. I also told Michael he needs to take over Dad's work organization. Issues. I don't know how to handle that stuff, and I don't want to learn. It's not my responsibility. What did he say? He wasn't thrilled, but he agreed. We both realized that we'd been coasting on your willingness to handle the hard stuff while criticizing you for not being available enough. The conversation continued for another hour, with Jessica asking about my job, my apartment, my new friends. For the first time in years, she seemed genuinely interested in my life, rather than just tolerating discussion of it before redirecting to her own concerns. As we walked back toward my office, Jessica stopped suddenly. Anna Marie, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Okay. Do you think there's any chance you'll ever move back to Denver? Ever want to be geographically close to the family again? I thought about my beautiful apartment, my challenging job, my hiking friends and dinner companions. I thought about the life I'd built entirely on my own terms, free from the weight of family expectations and obligations. No, I don't think I'll ever move back. This is my home now. Jessica nodded, looking sad but not surprised. I figured as much. You seem really settled here, really happy. I am. I'm glad. I wish it hadn't taken us losing you for me to understand what we were doing wrong. But I'm glad you found a place where you can be yourself. After Jessica left, I spent the rest of the day thinking about our conversation. Her apology felt genuine, and her acknowledgement of the family dynamics felt real rather than manipulative. But I also knew that one conversation couldn't undo years of established patterns. Over the next few months, I watched from a distance as my family struggled to function without their designated problem solver. Michael called occasionally with updates, usually after he'd been forced to handle some crisis that would have previously been delegated to me. Dad's taxes were a disaster this year, he reported during one call. Took me 3 weekends to sort through everything. I had no idea how much work you were doing for him. Mom had a meltdown about wedding planning last week and tried to guilt me into taking over vendor coordination, Jessica texted. I told her she could hire a wedding planner or figure it out herself. Princess got sick again, and Mom expected me to research veterinarians and coordinate her care, Dad called to tell me. I had to explain that I'm perfectly capable of making phone calls and scheduling appointments myself. Each update confirmed what I'd suspected. My family was learning to handle their own responsibilities, but the learning curve was steep and uncomfortable. They were discovering that many of the crises they'd passed off to me weren't actually emergencies, just inconveniences they hadn't wanted to deal with. Summer brought Jessica's wedding, held in Denver without my attendance. I'd sent a generous gift and a kind note, but I hadn't felt any pull to return for the event. Instead, I spent that weekend hiking in the Columbia River Gorge with Rebecca and Marcus, watching waterfalls and feeling grateful for relationships that didn't require me to perform a specific role to maintain them. Jessica called me the week after the wedding. I wanted to thank you for the gift. The wine glasses are beautiful. I'm glad you liked them. How was the wedding? It was perfect, actually. Smaller than we'd originally planned because Mom's dramatics drove away some vendors, but that made it more intimate. And David and I handled most of the final preparations ourselves instead of trying to manage Mom's involvement. That sounds lovely. It was. And Anna Marie, I kept thinking about you during the ceremony, about how you should have been there, but also about how much stronger I felt knowing I'd managed everything myself instead of depending on someone else to fix problems for me. The comment struck me as both sad and hopeful. Sad that my absence from a major family event felt normal rather than tragic, but hopeful that Jessica was recognizing the value of self-reliance. I'm proud of you for setting boundaries and managing things yourself. I learned from watching you. It took me a while to understand what you were teaching us by refusing to be our safety net anymore. Fall arrived with its spectacular display of Oregon colors, and I found myself reflecting on the year that had passed since I'd made the decision to prioritize my own life. I'd been promoted again, now overseeing marketing operations for the entire Western region. I'd bought a small house in a neighborhood filled with craftsman bungalows and community gardens. I'd developed routines and friendships that brought me genuine joy. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my own judgment about what I needed and deserved. I no longer questioned whether my feelings were valid or whether my needs were reasonable. I'd developed an internal compass that pointed toward my own well-being rather than everyone else's convenience. The phone calls from Denver had decreased to a manageable frequency. Mom called monthly with updates about Princess and complaints about various inconveniences, but she no longer expected me to solve her problems. Dad called occasionally to ask advice about work situations, but he'd learned to implement solutions himself rather than asking me to handle things for him. Jessica and Michael checked in regularly, but our conversations focused on actual relationships rather than crisis management. On a crisp November evening, as I was making dinner in my own kitchen in my own house, Mom called with news that felt significant. Anna Marie, I wanted to let you know that we've decided to downsize. We're selling the house and moving to a smaller place. The house. The one where Princess had claimed my childhood bedroom, where family gatherings had always centered around everyone else's achievements while mine were barely acknowledged. That's a big decision. What prompted it? It's too much space for just the two of us and Princess. And frankly, it's too much maintenance now that we don't have you here to help with everything. The admission was casual, almost offhanded, but it represented a significant acknowledgement. They were finally recognizing how much I'd contributed to maintaining their lifestyle and comfort. Where are you thinking of moving? There's a nice senior community about 20 minutes from where we are now. Smaller houses, maintenance included, and they allow pets. That sounds like it could be perfect for you. We think so. The house goes on the market next week. I felt a complex mix of emotions about this news. Relief that they were making practical decisions about their living situation. Sadness about the end of an era, even though that era had been painful for me. And something else. Something like closure. What will happen to my old room? Oh, that's still Princess's room. The new place has a perfect sun-filled bedroom for her. Of course it did. Even in downsizing, Princess's comfort remained a priority. But strangely, this didn't bother me the way it once would have. The room had become symbolic of my place in the family hierarchy, but I no longer needed that symbol to understand my worth. I'm glad you're making changes that work better for your current needs. You know, Anna Marie, I've been thinking about what you said before you moved away, about feeling like we didn't appreciate you. This was unexpected. Mom rarely referenced our difficult conversations directly. What about it? I think maybe you were right. I think we got so used to depending on you that we forgot to show gratitude for everything you did. It wasn't a full apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I'd ever received before. Thank you for saying that. I want you to know that we miss having you close by. Not just because you helped with things, but because you're our daughter and we love you. I love you too, Mom. I always have. That was never the question. What was the question then? I considered how to explain this in a way she might understand. The question was whether you loved me enough to treat me with the same consideration you showed everyone else. Whether my needs mattered as much as Jessica's and Michael's and Princess's. And what's the answer? I think you're all learning that they do. It's taken some time and some difficult adjustments, but you're figuring out how to function as a family without using me as your personal support system. It hasn't been easy. No, I imagine it hasn't, but it's been necessary. Are you happy there? In Portland? I'm very happy. I have work that challenges me, friends who value me, and a life that feels authentically mine. Do you think you'll ever want to move back closer to home? Mom, this is home now. Portland is where I belong. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. The conversation ended with expressions of love and promises to stay in touch. After hanging up, I sat in my living room looking at the life I'd built for myself. Photos from hiking trips with friends, artwork from local galleries, books I'd chosen because they interested me rather than because they might impress someone else. This was what it looked like to put yourself first. Not selfishly, not cruelly, but with the healthy self-regard that allowed you to show up authentically, in relationships rather than performing whatever role seemed most likely to earn approval. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, standing in Princess's room with a box of books, feeling invisible and unvalued. She could never have imagined the confidence and contentment I felt now. She'd been so afraid of losing her family's love that she'd forgotten to cultivate love for herself. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Wine Wednesday tomorrow? New bottle from that vineyard we visited last month. I texted back. Absolutely. My place or yours? Yours. I want to see how your garden survived the first frost. Simple plans with a good friend who enjoyed my company without expecting me to solve her problems or manage her emotions. This was what healthy relationships looked like. As I prepared for bed in my own house in my chosen city, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. It had started with a dog getting my childhood bedroom, but it had really been about so much more than that. It had been about recognizing my own worth, setting boundaries that protected my well-being, and choosing relationships that nourished rather than depleted me. I'd given my family a gift, though they might never see it that way. I'd forced them to develop independence and self-reliance. I'd shown them that love shouldn't be conditional on someone's willingness to sacrifice their own needs. I'd demonstrated that healthy relationships require reciprocity and mutual respect. Most importantly, I'd given myself permission to build a life that made me genuinely happy, a life where I was seen, valued, and appreciated for who I was, rather. than what I could do for others. Looking out my bedroom window at the Portland skyline, I felt something I'd never experienced before: complete peace with my choices. I'd stopped asking for crumbs of attention and built myself a feast of authentic relationships and meaningful work. The dog could keep the room. I had found something infinitely more valuable: a home where I belonged, not because I was useful, but because I was me. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.